Good afternoon. This is Jacqueline Eckern from Eating Disorder Hope with you, and I am pleased to announce that we are having a presentation today by Mr. Lee Neagle. He is with the Aloria Institute, and he is actually the director of their Institute for Education and Research. He's a prominent eating disorder clinician. He has nearly 2 decades of experience with eating disorder treatment on a national scale, heading up and creating programs and treatment facilities across the country. Lee found his passion for eating disorder treatment decades ago as a residential counselor. And he is also an active lobbyist on Capitol Hill and is an advocate for eating disorder treatment. He also serves on the board of directors for the Residential Eating Disorders Consortium. His presentation today is titled Dropping the Rope, the Use of Mindfulness-Based Techniques for Clients and Practitioners in the Treatment of Eating Disorders. And just a little bit of housekeeping for you real quick. You can ask questions and I can respond to those for you during the presentation if you have any questions while Lee is presenting. You will see some handouts. You're welcome to open those and print those off. Lee very generously gave us a PDF copy of his excellent PowerPoint. And we will be taking questions. You can enter questions where you'll see on the box on the right-hand side, and we will respond to those at the end of the presentation. With that, I would like to hand it over to Lee, and thank you again for attending.
Good afternoon, everybody. Really appreciate you all deciding to attend this webinar, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. Throughout this process, it's a little different since I'm doing a webinar, that if you do have any questions, please type them in. I'm used to having dialogues with people as we go through this. I prefer not to have it be a complete hour of you listening to me talk through this process. But what I'm hoping that you get out of this is understanding a little bit of what mindful-based techniques can be used not only for our clients if you are a practitioner, but I also want to talk about the other side, which is how I can see practitioners using mindfulness-based techniques for themselves. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the mind can get in the way of our clients leading a full, rich, meaningful, fulfilling life, and also how it can get in the practitioner's way of leading a rich, full, and meaningful life. So I think it's important to understand both sides of that as we go through this. So I'll be not only talking about using this technique with any of the clients that we treat, but also hopefully for ourselves. So if you have questions, please just type them in the box as we start moving forward. A little bit of an overview. We're going to define mindfulness. We're going to talk about typical presentations and expectations of care when we treat somebody. There's going to be a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy techniques discussed in here because really a lot of that is based in mindfulness. We're going to talk about what dropping the rope is. I have some slides to go over an actual metaphor that you can use with your clients or yourself. We're going to go over controlled thought, how we try to control or minimize or get rid of thoughts. We're really going to get into, towards the end, valued living, discussing experiential avoidance versus valued living, practicing some diffusion techniques, practicing some acceptance actions, and mindfulness exercise that we're going to close with. I'm going to try to leave about 10 minutes at the end of the hour for questions specifically. So if something doesn't get answered for you in the moment, please hold on. We're going to try our best to get to all the questions. So as we move forward, I think it's really important to start defining what mindfulness is. And I've just broken it down into really, really simple terms here. What it is for me, the ability to be present in the moment, regardless of thoughts and feelings at the time. Can I be right here, right now? And it allows me to experience life in a little bit more rich and meaningful way. What it isn't, and I think this is really important to understand, is mindfulness is not a way to avoid pain or get rid of or minimize difficult circumstances. And it's not some magical tool that allows us to be happy at all times, no matter what. There's the things that I really love in the book, Happiness Trap, which is one of the references here, is that there's this belief that if we're not happy all the time, that there's something inherently wrong with us, that we're having unwanted or difficult thoughts or feelings, and some belief that mindfulness is some kind of ethereal plane of existence that we obtain where nothing becomes difficult and everything is easy for us and we're always happy. It's not the case. Mindfulness is just the ability to be here now in the moment. And some of what we talk about later on will specifically go through how we can connect to the present moment. So one of the things I always talk about when I've treated clients in the past is asking them why they come into treatment. And I just put a couple bullet points here that kind of connect to different statements that clients have made that seem to kind of group together over the years. So they come with distressing thoughts about their body, their weight, their shape, their size, significant trauma issues. They've been engaging in coping mechanisms that have led to significant medical, nutritional, or psychological complications. And this can be anything from overexercising to binge and purge cycles to fasting to overuse of diuretics or laxatives, sex addiction, gambling, shopping, relationship addiction, et cetera, Also relational distress. I'm having stress in the home life. I'm having stress with my significant other. I'm having stress within my family. And then other comorbid disorders such as mood or anxiety. So when we start to dig a little deeper, and then the next question I ask is the expectations. What is it that you're wanting to get out of this process? Through the therapeutic process. And our clients will say, and I've heard this in different ways, but they kind of all group together, I just want to be happy. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to have these thoughts anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I just want to be normal. And we have to be careful when we start to get some of these therapeutic expectations, especially where like I come to therapy or I come to treatment and I'm just then going to be happy. And us as practitioners, we have to really start to discuss expectations of this process. When I hear those type of things, I have to take a step back because some of the dangers of these expectations, number one, it's impossible to control all of our thoughts and our feelings all the time. And I want you to try it out right now, like in this moment, just for a couple minutes. Think about a song that comes on the radio that has a deep meaning to you. Where do your thoughts go or what are your feelings? My assumption is if you haven't heard a song that was really meaningful to you, especially when you were in your adolescence, that when you hear it, you can probably tell me where you were, what was going on then, what was important to you in your life, who you were interested in, what you were doing, et cetera, et cetera. You're not able to just block that out. That song comes on and all of a sudden all the associated memories and feelings and thoughts are connected with it. So it's kind of this example that I use sometimes with clients that want to never have this double negative, never want to have any negative thoughts, that it's going to be really hard for us to ever control all of our thoughts and all of our feelings all the time. There's another classic one we can use. If anybody's watching this right now, and I can't see all your eyeballs doing this, but try not to think of yes, there's our classic pink elephant. So stop thinking of this pink elephant as I'm discussing it. Stop thinking about it. Don't imagine it. Get it out of your head. Now, if you were able to not think of the pink elephant when you saw it or when you heard me say it, good for you. It's very rare that could ever happen. Once we say something, it comes into our mind and it stays there for a while. And then sometimes the more that we try to get rid of something, the more that it stays. So as I go back a couple slides here, I want to be really careful about expectations of not wanting to have difficult or painful thoughts anymore. And further dangers of these expectations is that clients believe they can experience life without pain or discomfort, or believe that they can somehow control every thought or feeling, are going to be set up for disappointment, which I think eventually leads into a poor therapeutic alliance. And for us as practitioners, I think it's important to also note that if we believe we can take away, or we have the power to take away all of our clients' thoughts and discomfort, it can lead to a constant disappointment in our abilities and questioning whether or not we're doing the right things. So I try to really discuss experiences with clients and what the expectations are moving forward. So in summary, when I'm talking about mindfulness, I mean being in the present moment and taking actions that lead to a life of value and meaning as defined by you. Hopefully that's a goal we have when we work with our clients, and I hope it's a goal for ourselves as we work being in the moment. I've talked to my clients about this several times, which is my only concern as a practitioner is, are you leading a life that is meaningful and fulfilling to you, as defined by you? Are the actions and behaviors you're taking in giving you a sense of value and fulfillment? And if not, we can do some work around that to figure out essentially what your values are, how we can set goals that are connected to those values, how we can engage in committed action, which we'll talk a little bit later. But also for ourselves, I want us to remember that hopefully as practitioners, we're doing the same thing, that we're also trying to lead a life of value and meaning as defined by us. So I think it's important to understand this parallel process between the clients and ourselves is we're both human. And I hope that we're moving in this direction of valued living. So some client work, is mindfulness-based approaches, including those in acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as ACT, can really work well in assisting clients with body image issues, maladaptive eating patterns, and compensatory behaviors. So the focus here, as we talked about before, is to assist the client to be able to experience a full range of emotions and thoughts while continuing to engage in actions or leading a life that they find meaningful, fulfilling, and value-based. So this is what's really important. It might be really, really difficult for some clients to accept, especially if in the past they've been told they can control their thinking or feeling 100% of the time, or believe that experiencing unwanted thoughts or feelings are a sign of weakness or failure. This is really a common thing that comes up for me. It's the sense of when we talk about, and I'm just going to use a general thought, I'm not good enough, right? This overwhelming sense of not being good enough, being worthless. So now, well, I don't want to have that thought. So what you're saying to me, Lee, is I'm going to always have to have that thought. And what I'm going to try to work around is that, yes, our mind is going to tell us things from time to time that isn't going to be helpful. And we can't control it 100%, but what we can control is the behavior that we choose to engage in, or how much we decide to struggle or wrestle with those thoughts and or those feelings. It's definitely not a sign of weakness. And with any of our perfectionistic clients, it can be difficult because they see this as a half measure. They can see this as, well, I'm still having that thought. I don't like having that thought. I don't want to have that thought. Your job is to get rid of that thought for me. And again, if we go back to the first few slides, that's going to lead to some real disconnection in the therapeutic relationship because we're trying to control something 100% of the time that I don't believe we can control 100% of the time. So what's dropping the rope? So interspersed throughout these, I'm going to use an analogy that I found works really, really well with clients in explaining this whole process. And it talks about, first of all, connecting with thoughts, attempting to control or get rid of thoughts versus experiences while also engaging in the life that they want to lead. So as we go through the first slide, I'm sorry, I'm a little caught up on the slides. You will see those pictures in a little bit. I just wanted to identify thoughts that we can get wrapped up in that remove us from being in the moment or being mindful. And I put two separate columns on here, the client and the practitioner, because I've worked with a lot of practitioners in my life, either through supervision or colleagues that I've collaborated with, and I've heard these things consistently. So for our clients, it's this constant thought of, I'm broken. I should be healthier. I should be stronger. I'm not good enough. I'm disgusting. And our clients are constantly in their mind with those thoughts. On the practitioner side, what I've seen in the past is this overwhelming sense of, well, I'm a fraud. You know, somebody's going to find out that I really don't know what I'm doing and I'm not good enough at what I do. The session was quote unquote bad. It's my fault. My colleagues seem to be so much better than I am. I'm an idiot. I'm not good enough at this. I've watched other people present and speak and they seem to be so knowledgeable and I'm not. And it's very difficult for ourselves to be in the moment when we're having those thoughts. And on a personal note, like even setting up this webinar for myself, I have thoughts that are going through my head of, well, why are you speaking instead of somebody else? There are people that know this much better than you do, Lee, that this isn't going to go well, that people are not going to be happy about this presentation, or you're going to get a bad review, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's only natural that we have some of these thoughts. Now, what I'm trying not to do is get caught up in those thoughts. And one of the things I could have done is cancel the webinar, say I was sick, avoid this experience. But it is within my values to hopefully continue. Like I really enjoy educating and I really enjoy talking about these things. And collaborating is a value of mine. So this is me engaging in my value, even though sometimes my mind is telling me things that would just be easier for me to get wrapped up in that and not do this. So I think it's important with our clients then, and this is a really powerful thing for ourselves or our clients, which is reviewing our attempts to control unwanted thoughts. So a lot of our common examples from our clients are eating disorder behaviors, right? I feel like I'm disgusting. I feel like I'm overweight. I feel like I'm going to be abandoned. Nobody's going to ever love me. I'm disgusting. So what do? We can overexercise. We can try to lose a lot of weight very quickly. We can eat clean. We can put on different clothes. Substance use is another powerful one that disconnects from unwanted thoughts or feelings because we mood alter through that process. Even affirmation work comes in here, and I know that might pop up to some people, go, well, affirmation work, that's good. We teach our clients to do that. So when I get into talking about experiential avoidance, affirmations can be difficult if the reason you're using affirmations is to control the negative thought. So some of the common things that I've heard in the past from clients is, well, every time there's a negative, I tell myself 2 positives. And that way it counteracts the negatives, and then I just feel positive about myself. And the next question I asked after reviewing our unwanted attempts are, has it worked long term? And I really haven't worked with any clients that have done affirmation work that have said these affirmations have worked long term to the effect that I no longer have difficult or unwanted thoughts anymore. They're all gone. Everything is constantly positive in my life. I haven't experienced that with any of the work that I've done. For some of our staff and practitioners here, this is constant training and sometimes overtraining. This also applies to some of our athletes that are perfectionists that we work with as well, which is I feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not successful enough, so I'm going to keep training and overtraining and overtraining and overtraining because that's going to help me get rid of that thought as I put exercise in and they're sleeping. Great, it's another way to dissociate, isolate, get away from unwanted thoughts or feelings. And as we review this, and I do have the picture slides coming up here, has it worked? And that's something we always have to talk about with our clients and ourselves. Are these behaviors working for us long term? If the goal is I don't want to have these thoughts or feelings anymore, and I start to struggle with them, I start to engage in these control attempts, have they work long term? Have our clients' abilities when they've started binge and purge cycles, has that gotten rid of the thought of I'm disgusting? Long term, it may in the short term help them reduce that thought or get rid of it in the moment, just like using substances would. But long term, what I see and experience with the clients that I've worked with is that those thoughts just keep coming back. So now the behaviors, the control behaviors have to increase, and our clients and ourselves, if we struggle with unwanted control attempts, is that we're constantly in this battle of fighting these thoughts and these feelings. And remember, if we can agree, and I know that you guys can't talk to me directly right now, but if we can agree that we can't control 100% of our thoughts and feelings at all times, we're wrestling with something that we can never quote unquote win, right? So we're spending all of our time pushing and pulling and back and forth. And what we're not doing is we're not in the moment. Think of how many clients that you've talked to that have been disconnected from the moment because right now they're thinking about their body, how people are perceiving their body, what it looks like, how it feels right now, and they're in a conversation with somebody, but they can't tell you what that conversation was about because they really weren't there. They were doing the struggle. So as we get into some of these picture slides, I think this is a great way to introduce this concept to our clients through all 3 phases, which is the struggle, the fight and the control of behaviors, dropping the rope, and then valued living. So as we look here, we have our not good enough mantra on the right, and I've used a couple different ways of doing this analogy. I spent some time in Arizona, so that's the Grand Canyon, so we can just imagine that being the Grand Canyon between our fellow there and our monster that's not good, our not good enough monster. And what we see is this constant fight, right? We see this struggle, we see this going back and forth. And if we notice, the monster is much bigger. And that monster is trying to pull this gentleman into the Grand Canyon. Also, if your clients have ever played hot lava when they were kids, like the floor is hot lava and they have to stay in the furniture, stay off the hot lava, this could be a good analogy as well, that you try not to get pulled in the hot lava. So they're struggling and he's pulling really, really hard. And as much as he's pulling, that monster is pulling harder, and he's trying not to get sucked into that canyon or that hot lava, and it's this back and forth. And if we can look at that as our struggle with control behaviors. So this is me having this thought of not being good enough. So how am I going to be good enough? Well, I'm going to take more trainings, or I'm going to get a higher level degree, or I'm going to lose X amount of pounds, or I'm going to have X amount of shape, or I'm going to do any of these things so I can reduce or get rid of this thought of I'm not good enough. But remember, if again we come back to those first slides and talk about our mind is going to tell us from time to time that we're not good enough. That's how our mind works. Like from an evolutionary standpoint, if people are into acceptance and commitment therapy, they can read more about it. But our mind's going to tell us things that we're not good enough. Everybody, a vast majority of everybody I've ever worked with or even talked with in my daily life has had this experience. So we fight. We're fighting with it. And if you can imagine this guy pulling for the next 4 or 5 hours and not get sucked in there, what his shoulders would feel like, what his arms would feel like, and what he can't do right now in this moment is he can't do anything else. He can't engage in valued living. He can't be present. He can't be in the moment because right now all of his attention and focus is not to get pulled into that canyon. So as we go to the next step, which is, us talking about has it worked? So we think about all of the control attempts that we've used. Have any of them worked long term? That's always a question we want to ask. And if they haven't worked long term, what does it cost? What has it cost in terms of relational issues, occupational issues, educational issues, physical issues, financial issues? What does it cost to try to engage in all of these behaviors to get rid of or control unwanted thoughts or feelings? So what happens, and this is the title of our presentation, which is Drop the Rope. So dropping the rope is letting go of trying to control unwanted thoughts and feelings and instead using that energy to focus on a life of meaning. Now, what this doesn't mean is it doesn't mean the pain goes away. What we want to do when we work with our clients or doing our own personal work is we don't want to constantly engage in behaviors that A, are not working, or B, costing us from living a life of value or being in the moment. And that's what we talk about. If something's working, and that's what I tell my clients, if it's working for you long term, keep doing it. If it's connected with your values, keep doing it. I just don't want us to get in a cycle of constantly engaging in behaviors that are not working or costing us from living a life that's meaningful and fulfilling to us as defined by us. So if we look here, our gentleman has dropped the rope successfully. Great. He, as you can see, is very, very excited that he has dropped the rope. So what we have here, the monster's a little upset the rope got dropped. And remember, the rope is a struggle. That rope is those control behaviors to not get pulled into the canyon. So he's been able to drop it. So now what do we do moving forward? We've been able to try to disconnect a little bit. Well, now we want to talk about valued living. And valued living is really asking the questions such as this. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to lead? What's truly important to you? So like the real snippet here with values is how do you want to act and behave on an ongoing basis? And also understanding that values can never be achieved and they are only essentially providing us direction. So in the Act Made Simple, the book that's referenced in here as well, it's kind of like going west. So you can always go west, and no matter how far west you're going, you're still traveling west. So that's your value. Your value is to travel west. You're always going to be going in that direction. Values will be with you until you draw your last breath. Values are never checked off on a list. They're the way that you want to behave and act on an ongoing basis. So when we start to figure out what our values are, we can start doing what matters. So if we look at this last slide, or not last slide of the presentation, but last slide here in the pictures of doing what matters, what we can see is this gentleman here is a parent and he can be more present for his child. But what you'll notice is the monster isn't gone. The monster's still on the other side of the Grand Canyon or the lava pit or whatever we want to call it, and can still threaten and shout all of these things at this guy. He can still say, you're not good enough, you're a loser, you're an awful parent, you're never going to be good enough, you constantly screw up, how dare you even have a child? You're just going to screw that child up. It can shout all of those things across the river, or the gorge or the canyon. But what it can't do is it can't pull him in to the canyon. The only way that he's going to get pulled back into that canyon is he tries to pick up that rope and struggle with that not good enough. So this is what I get to with our clients and ourselves, again, if we're doing our own work, is that we're going to have our mind tell us things from time to time. And can we disconnect, or what ACT would call diffuse, from the thoughts, and can we do what matters, do things in our lives that is meaningful and fulfilling to us? Can we practice that? And part of those are mindfulness techniques, noticing what our mind is telling us, noticing the things it's saying, noticing the feelings that we're having, and deciding whether or not engaging in any sort of behaviors are going to be aligned with the values that we have. So here, this guy is not free of pain. The monster is still going to be screaming across the canyon, but he is free to do things that matter. He couldn't play with his child if we go back a couple slides and he's trying not to get pulled into the canyon. He can't be present in the moment. If one of his values is to be present in his relationships and he's doing this, he can't be present. So as we look at this last slide, it's not that we're avoiding pain, because pain and difficulty is still going to be there. That's part of life. But we are now recognizing these things that our mind's telling us, and we're taking the committed action to do what matters in our life. So this is an analogy that I use. It's in a lot of the acceptance and commitment therapy books. I just kind of put some drawings to it. You can use this anyway. What I found is that this really helps people understand, oh, okay, so yes, my mind's going to tell me things from time to time, but it doesn't necessarily mean I need to get into a battle with it. I would rather do things that are meaningful and fulfilling to me. And now this is like an important concept that's part of ACT, and experiential avoidance versus valued living. So experiential avoidance is all the actions that we engage in order to avoid uncomfortable situations, thoughts, feelings, urges, and memories. So this is what we do, and what we just talked about, that struggle where he's pulling back and forth on the rope, those control techniques can be experiential avoidance. I can choose to opt out of things. A lot of the clients that we've worked with have opted out of doing a lot of things that they might otherwise enjoy, because what their mind is telling them about their body, about their shape, about their weight, about their size, especially as I've worked with clients that struggle with eating disorders. Just a classic, I know, kind of cliched example is, clients that want to go out with their friends, but now their friends are going to a restaurant that's quote unquote not safe, that there's nothing on the menu that they feel that they can have, and they're freaked out about going there because of what's going to happen to their body if they don't stick to their diet or the restrictive behaviors. So now what they do is they don't go, or they try to redirect the group to go somewhere else, or they isolate. So again, I'm opting out of a situation where I truly want to spend some time with people that I appreciate and value. I can't do that because my mind is telling me all these things. So instead, I opt out of the experience. We avoid it, right? And with constant avoidance, with constant isolation, what I've found is there's no room for growth. If anybody listens to or reads any of Pia Melody's stuff, one of the gifts of pain and discomfort is growth if it's healthy. And there's a lot of opting out that happens when our mind is telling us all the stuff that we're caught up with, that we're fused with, that we're struggling with. Typically, experiential avoidance is a life that's either led in the past, and think about how much of us or how much of our clients lead this life of regret, like I should have. I'm sure we've heard a lot of shoulding. I think one of the things that makes me smile is that that another cliche term is stop shooting all over yourself. Or it's a life lived in the future, which is worry about what's going to happen or the next thing that's going to happen. But either way, we're not here. We're not here in the moment. We're living this life in the past, or we're living a life in the future. So valued living is about being here now and engaging in things that are meaningful to us or are aligned with our values. So I'm going to give a couple examples here of the difference between valued living and experiential avoidance. So let's say if you're a practitioner watching this right now, and you have a client that comes in for treatment for an eating disorder, and then they note exercise as a hobby and something important to them. And this is a pretty common situation that I have, which is, should my clients be able to exercise? Can they exercise? When is it healthy? When is it not healthy? Hopefully this helps. What I'm going to start asking about is, where's the motivation from exercising coming from? Because exercising in itself is not unhealthy. I'm going to know if it's experiential avoidance, if the client is using exercise because they have an overwhelming thought of being a loser, or I need to get rid of my stomach, or I look disgusting, and I'm trying to control that by going to the gym and exercising to the point where I'm feeling like, okay, I don't have that anymore. So I'm using these behaviors to avoid, control, or try to minimize or get rid of an unwanted thought. Right? Also, with our exercise as a control technique for any of our clients, and I can't see if anybody's laughing here, but these are the individuals that, if it's hailing outside, and it's like, let's imagine it's hailing golf balls outside, and instead of us going, hey, it's hailing golf balls outside, maybe I shouldn't go for a run today, if it's a control behavior, they're going to put on like a helmet and go for a run. Because they have to get rid of this thought or minimize the thought. They can't sit with this thought if they don't engage in this behavior. Now, if it's connected to value living, I would say it's because a client values fitness or being compassionate with themselves, and the way that they are doing that is through exercise. So I think it's always looking at, is it experiential avoidance or is it aligned with their values? If clients are aligned with values within their exercise, like, I encourage it. I would have them continue to do that. If it's experiential avoidance, again, what's driving to go to the gym is to get rid of these unwanted thoughts, or this constant pervasive belief that I look disgusting, I'll be better if I can lose this weight, or if I can tone up this or tone up that. It starts to become experiential avoidance. What we see is the cycle of it never being enough, and we can't get out of the gym. And now exercising, we have shin splints or stress fractures, we've tore a rotator cuff, and we're still trying to lift weights. That's where I start seeing a lot of this avoidance stuff come in, as opposed to living a life of values. So again, as practitioners, I think it's really important for us to differentiate this to determine the best course of care. If we're exercising while we're injured, if we're exercising to the detriment of other things in our life, if we have consistent dissatisfaction with exercise, and how I typically see this is, it's not enough, I need to do more. If we work with people that really opt out or have these control behaviors, see what happens if you ask them to do the same amount of exercise they did yesterday. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that, because I have to either run faster, or I have to run longer, or on a higher elevation, or burn more calories, or whatever it might be. It's not driven by values, it's driven by control of thoughts or getting rid of unwanted thoughts. So I have another example, and this falls more into the practitioner side. Now, I've seen this happen with staff members that I've worked with over the years, time to time. So say that you're a mental health counselor and you're signing out to complete a ton of trainings because you feel like make you a better practitioner. Well, that sounds great. That sounds like a responsible thing to do. I hope we all have continuing education going forward, and I hope we're all open to doing things differently as more and more data and research comes out. But it can also be a control technique if that practitioner is doing this because they feel like, as I talked about before, a fraud, or that I suck as a therapist. And the way that I'm going to try to get rid of those thoughts is by signing up for as many trainings and attending as many trainings as possible. So now I'm engaging in the behavior not because it's of value, but because I got to get rid of these thoughts. And my belief is I can get rid of these thoughts if I do these trainings. Now, if a practitioner is doing this because they value continuing education, like you can value education, you can value growth. Growth is a value. Professionally, then it's value-based, and I would say that it's probably aligned with health. But the first example is if you're doing it to get rid of thought, in most cases, I'm going to say that it's not going to get you where you want to be. People's thoughts are still going to be there, even if you got the whole alphabet after your last name. If you're still having these pervasive thoughts, and the reason you're adding all of the letters after your name is to get rid of these thoughts, there's keep coming, and you're still going to end up with the whole alphabet after your name, feeling the same way, usually not living a life of value and meaning, and definitely not being mindful. So I hope those two examples make sense. If you have any questions about these, we can answer them a little bit at the end. Excuse me while I take a drink here. So some cautions that I want to bring up here as we're starting to talk about it is to not get caught up in the true, false, right, or wrong struggle. So, for example, a client can report persistent thoughts of being a failure while they're currently aligning with that thought. Client states, well, I'm a failure, I failed my MCAT, so now I can't get into medical school. So me as a practitioner, it doesn't matter to me if that's a true or false or right or wrong statement. Because they could also say things like, well, I am overweight, the doctors told me I'm overweight, they told me I'm obese, and then like this person down the street said I look disgusting. Okay, I'm going to ask, is it helpful? Is aligning with that thought, is connecting and fusing with that thought of being a failure or disgusting or not good enough, is it leading you on a path towards meaningful and a fulfilling or fulfilled life? And that's an interesting concept, because a lot of our clients might have been taught like, okay, well, you can evidence, counter evidence, and you can poke holes in the theory. And that's a lot of base of CBT, which is great. I love CBT. I grew up learning that. It's just that in some cases we have clients like, oh, I've tried all of that and it's not working. So my question becomes, whether it's right or wrong or true or false is irrelevant in this sense. Is holding on to this and fighting with this thought getting you to the place that you want to be? If it is, then keep aligning and connecting with it. If it's not, we have to figure a way to disconnect from it. And I think that's something that's important to understand through this process, because we can get really caught up in the, well, it's true, it's false, it's right, it's wrong, here I have all this evidence. But I'm more concerned with, if you connect with this thought and embrace it and hold on to it, is it going to get you to leading the life that you want to lead, that's meaningful and fulfilling? So remember, let's get away from true and false and right and wrong, and let's move towards helpful, unhelpful. And that's what I always ask. Is this helpful? Is holding on to this thought, is wrestling with this thought, is embracing this thought or this feeling, is it helpful to you? If it is, great, keep doing it. If it's not, let's figure a way to help disconnect or to give it less power. So we're going to talk a little bit here on the next few slides about some of the mindful actions that we can practice and start to take. I think I've kind of beat everything else over the head with a hammer now to this point. So diffusion, and one of the hallmarks of being mindful is the ability to observe. Because to observe, you have to be present. And it's talked about a little bit in, actually a lot of the acceptance and commitment therapy treatment manuals and or books, which is the observing self versus the thinking self. And the best way that I can describe the observing self or being mindful or being in the moment is if any of you have any children or been around little babies and seen how they interact with the world. They are wholly in the moment, right? If you put lights in front of them, they're little toys that hang overhead when they're laying on the ground. They're going to grab them, they're going to touch them, they're going to examine them. Their eyes are going to be really wide. They're going to try to put everything in their mouth. They're in the moment. And as we get older, our thinking self develops, right? Our mind develops, what we consider that. And our mind's great. It's helped us survive. Like, it lets us know, hey, that stove is hot, don't put your hand on it. But it also is the same thing that tells us things like, we're not good enough, we're going to be a failure. If you try this, you're just going to screw it up. Why are you even bothering? Our mind does that. So a lot of times we get connected into the thinking self, because that's what we're used to, and we lose touch with this observing part of ourselves. But what's great about the observing part of ourselves is the observing part of ourselves exists forever. As long as we're breathing, we have the ability to access the observing part of ourselves. And in order to observe, like I said, you have to be present, you have to be here now. So as we start these diffusion techniques, the goal is not to get rid of a thought, but instead allow it to exist and see it for what it is, just words. And we're going to remember when we work with our clients or ourselves, if it works, we're going to keep using it. If it doesn't work, we're going to start practicing some of the diffusion techniques. So One of the things that I have my clients start to do, and this is classic acceptance and commitment therapy, diffusion, which is the I'm thinking or the I notice I'm thinking. So our clients might be presenting with fusion around I'm disgusting. And they've tried to control that thought by constant dieting and over-exercise and restriction and purging, and they're still having those thoughts. So they can take that step back, which is they're in their thinking cells when they say I'm disgusting, because it's a statement. And usually when our clients fuse with it, they're fusing with it in the sense of it's true, and I hate it, and I want to get rid of it. So this is the way that I get rid of it, the behaviors I just talked about. Ask them to start that statement with, I'm thinking I'm disgusting. And ask them if they can connect to that observing part of just observe, I'm thinking I'm disgusting. And the next step you can take is I notice I'm thinking I'm disgusting. So what we're here is we're accessing a little bit more of that observing part of ourselves. That's not a statement. It's I'm noticing what my mind is telling me. And as clients practice some of this, what they'll notice is like, I don't feel as strongly connected to it. Remember, it's not to get rid of the thought. This isn't getting rid of the thought. It's practicing observing the thought and noticing the thought and noticing it for what it is. It's a thought. They are words. We're noticing that our mind is telling us these words. Also, I'm thinking I'm fat. I'm noticing I'm thinking I'm fat. This is allowing for some space to observe the thought, which I think is really, really important. Another one is and we can use a different inanimate object. So for the next 10 seconds, for anybody that's listening to this, and again, I can't see you, I know you can all see me, I want you to hold tight to an unhelpful thought that you have fused or aligned with in the past. It could be anything. I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, I'm worthless, I'm a loser, I'm disgusting, whatever it is. Hold tight for like the next 10 seconds. I'm just going to look at the clock here. And bring that right to the forefront of your mind and hold it there. Bring it up. Just take some time. Okay, so typically now, if I was working with you and I could see you, I'd ask how you're feeling. Like, have you connected with it? Like, how aligned are you with that thought on 0 to 10? And now I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you the next statement. Okay, and I want you to hold on to it just as tightly, or at least try to hold on to it just as tightly as that last unhelpful thought that you've had. So now I want you to sit there and hold on tight to I'm a basketball. So hold on to the thought of I'm a basketball. Okay, so did any of you become basketballs? Do you all believe that you're basketballs? Do you think you are one? And typically when I've done this with clients, they laugh a little bit, and you can use any object. I've used, a lot of the ACT books use banana, I've used pink fluffy pillows, I've used whatever, helicopters, whatever it is. And really what we're doing here is they laugh a little bit about it, and I'm a big fan of humor in these situations, is that I don't believe I'm a basketball. They're just words. They're words. Just like I'm disgusting and fat are words. The only difference is how much power we give them, how tightly we hold on to them. So this is another technique that we can use during this process to help our clients start to kind of disconnect a little bit from those helpful, unhelpful or unwanted thoughts. So ACT also makes a point of focus to engage in committed action towards a life that's meaningful and fulfilling as you define it. So this is, even though we're having painful thoughts or emotions, we're only going to align with them if they're moving us towards that end of a life of meaningful and fulfillment as defined by us. If they're not, then we stop the struggle and we start engaging in valued and meaningful behavior. So what is acceptance? We hear that term a lot, right? Acceptance is being in the moment and being accepting of the feelings and emotions that are coming up for us. and I think this is a really important topic that I touch on with my clients as well, is that remember, you don't have to agree with these thoughts. You don't have to be happy. You don't have to be happy about them being there. You don't have to co-sign off on them. You don't have to tolerate them or surrender to them. Acceptance is experiencing without unnecessary, unworkable attempts to control. So when I talk about acceptance with clients, and I work with somebody like, well, so I should just accept that I'm disgusting? Absolutely not. I'm not asking anybody to sign off on that. But I'm asking if you'd be willing to accept that your mind is going to tell you that from time to time. Your mind is going to tell you things like you're a failure or you're not good enough. And it's now our choice of how tightly or how intensely we want to connect to that thought and how much energy we're going to use in trying to control, manipulate, minimize, get rid of that thought. So I think it's really important to understand acceptance is accepting that our mind is going to tell us these things from time to time and experiencing it without, trying all these control techniques that we just talked about. So there are two popular acceptance techniques that we can use. One's a metaphor. One is just noticing. There's a lot of power around noticing. Asking our clients to notice feelings, and especially when we work with eating disorders and we're talking about bodies and body image, sometimes to come up, ask them to notice where the feeling's located. Ask them to notice how powerful or where it's most powerful. Where is it least powerful? What are some of the sensations that are radiating from that feeling? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it smooth? Is it rough? Just asking and practicing noticing can be a really, really powerful skill because, again, it's accessing this observing part of ourselves, noticing feelings. There's a metaphor that you can use here as well, which is feelings can be like quicksand, right? The more that we struggle with them, the more it takes us under. So can we do the one thing that's really scary, which is we can lay back into the feeling, imagine our body's making this large surface area and breathe, right? So what we think is, oh my gosh, we're sinking, we're in quicksand, so we struggle. And what happens is the more that we struggle, the more that we start getting sucked under. So I'm going to ask, and this is a metaphor I use with my clients, can we allow for space for that feeling to exist? And a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy will talk about breathing into making space for those feelings, as opposed to struggling and fighting with them, because the more in the struggle we fight with them, the more that we start kind of getting sucked under. But it can be really scary to lean back into an unwanted feeling and make space and allow for it to exist, which is the practice around this that I think is so important. So here's a client example I want to use to kind of like wrap up everything that we've just talked about. So let's think about some of the thoughts. We have a client that has fused with thoughts or aligned with thoughts surrounding body image of I'm disgusting, my thighs are so fat, I look like a dude. So the ways that they try to control those thoughts are I've restricted, I've used laxatives, as well as socially isolating myself from peers and people that I care about. The client also presents with the value of being present, spending time with friends. So the committed action that they take is they go to the beach with their friends, even when they're having uncomfortable thoughts, even when their mind is telling them, everybody's going to think you're disgusting. How dare you go out on the beach? You're just going to ruin everybody's day. What are you doing? You can't even fit into that swimsuit that you want to wear. And we are practicing, I'm noticing that my mind is telling me this, and I'm going to take committed action and thank my mind for telling me, thank my mind for being there, thanks for telling me mind, and I'm going to go continue this. Or I'm going to say, hey, when I hear this, like my thighs are so fat I look like a dude, I might tell myself, hey, I'm a big pink fluffy pillow. To laugh about it, to remind myself that my mind is going to tell me these things from time to time. And if I start to really engage or try to control, I'm not going to be able to go out and do the things that I value, which one of these is being present with my friends. So that's kind of an example that I use, and I'm sure we can think of a lot more, or you can think of a lot more out there as we're going through this webinar. And as we start to close, I really like this mindful exercise that was taken from Pocket Mindfulness. Again, it's in the slides, so you can look and link back to it, which is basically just taking some time to choose an object from within your immediate environment and focus on watching it. Could be anything that's moving around. It could be like a clock that's moving back and forth. It could be the second hand on a clock if you have one in your office right now. And practicing not doing anything except noticing the things you're looking at. Just simply relax into watching it for as long as your concentration allows. Now, what will happen from time to time is our thinking self, probably more than time to time, will attempt to pull us away from it. We'll think about the grocery shopping we have to do. We're thinking about how stupid this feels and this is dumb and what's this guy talking about. It's great. It's fine. That's what our mind's supposed to do. We can thank it. We can practice on noticing that this is a dumb thing to do. And I can go back to observing that second hand as it moves along. My guess is you're going to have to constantly kind of breathe, go back to the moment. So imagine looking at that object like you're looking at it and seeing it for the first time. Notice the shape. I'm looking at one that's moving on the wall right next to me right now. Noticing how it wiggles, like my second hand is kind of stopping and moving. Noticing exactly the color, how pointed it is, how long it is. Noticing as it passes over the other numbers. Imagine you're seeing that for the first time. Again, that's your observing self. Start to visually explore every aspect of its formation and just be consumed by it. And allow yourself to connect with any energy and its purpose within the natural world. So this is something that you can start your day off with. You can start a session off with if you're a practitioner, is really starting to connect with that observing part of ourselves, which allows us to be mindful. The more that we can connect with that observing part of ourselves, the more mindful we can be. And remember, and also give yourself compassion, if you're willing to, that your mind is going to continually pull you away. It's going to continually try to get you to go somewhere else. And you can just practice a few of those diffusion techniques we talked about. Remember, like, hey, we're not going to struggle. Thank our mind for doing this. Notice thinking. I'm a basketball. We'll come back to the moment. So I think it's really important to remember that we're going to process and connect with the moment. So as we close, again, kind of wrapping up, the goal is really to get clients and ourselves to stop struggling with thoughts and feelings and start to engage in behaviors and actions that are in congruence, I should say incongruent, not incongruent, I apologize, incongruent with our values. And that's part of being present in the moment. And really working with our clients to take intentional and committed action that's aligned with values and spend time living or attempting to live a life that's full and meaningful as defined by us or them, depending on who it is. So as we're wrapping up, I know I've kind of hit that same point over and over again, but I've found it works very well with the clients that I've worked with is the sense of, okay, I can breathe. Yes, my mind is going to tell us this, and it tells a lot of people a lot of crazy stuff. And I don't necessarily need to get wrapped up in it. I can drop the rope. I can say, okay, I know that my mind's going to tell me this stuff, but I'm done trying to struggle and fight with everything, because struggling and fighting with it is taking all of my energy away from being in the moment and doing things that I value and things that are important to me, because I'm spending so much time trying not to get something in the canyon. So as we close today, I have some references here, and they're going to be on your handouts. I just want to say I really appreciate you listening to me for the last 50 or so minutes. And I do want to open it up to questions if anybody has any, and any ways that we can collaborate as a group moving forward. Because like I said, I'm always willing to take feedback and to also refine my practice, because that's one of my values. So I don't know if Jacqueline has anything on her end, but I want to say again, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you. This has been excellent, really informative. We do have some questions, and I'll just read them off to you if that's all right.
Sure. Yep.
One person is saying, this is an individual that says, I exercise to get rid of the invasive thoughts and to get rid of my stomach because I'm disgusting looking. Is there a way to make my exercising a legitimate self-improvement instead of experiential avoidance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the first things to do is to really look at, like, what do you value around exercise? Meaning, like, what is it at a core level how is it that you want to behave when you exercise. Like, it might be like, I have a value of fitness. I have a value where, I appreciate my body's ability to move when I run, and I'm really mindful, and that's a really cool experience. So I would say that if you decide to exercise as a value versus as experiential avoidance, is to first define what your values are around fitness and or exercise or your body. So like some people might say, my value is I want to exercise really hard. Okay, that can be a value. And maybe one of the goals is my value is to connect with my body. So one of the goals that can be in service of that value is, instead of I'm going to work out until I'm almost passed out, I'm going to go to a class. My goal is to take a class and be done working out as soon as that class ends and not engage in any more exercise, if that makes sense. So it's almost like I'm going here to experience my body and experience and be really observant of the fact of how amazing my body is. It allows me to either lift weights or to do kickboxing or to run or to swim. And I'm going to give it a certain amount of time, maybe say it's 10 or 15 minutes, where I can just really be observant and connect with myself in the moment and my body. And then I can stop. And I can also recognize when my mind is going to tell me things like, you need to exercise more, this isn't enough, you didn't get your heart rate up high enough, you didn't burn enough calories, you didn't run hard enough. When those things start to come up, practice thanking your mind for that, or I'm noticing and I'm thinking my mind is telling me to exercise harder or longer, or that I failed and didn't do well enough. And my value is to just be able to experience my body and appreciate it, and I can walk out of the gym. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's great. I can use it personally when I exercise. Very well explained, because I think of the term functionality when I talk about trying to have a better body image, but giving all those concrete examples were really helpful, Lee. Another question from excuse me.
Sorry, I just want to jump back into the gym thing because it comes up a lot. So I go to the gym and my mind wants to compare with everybody that's there, the people that can lift to heavier weights than me or are in quote unquote better shape than me. But my goal of going to the gym is I'd like to be around a little longer. I have nieces, and I like to be able to carry them, and I like to be able to play with them and have the energy to do that. So my value is to be present. So one of my goals then is to be able to, I'm going there because A, I like to experience my body, and I like to take care of myself. And my mind still does try to take me away to like, oh, well, look at so-and-so, and look at so-and-so, and you don't look that way. And I have to remind myself, I'm noticing, I'm thinking that I need to be doing this, or I tell myself the same things that we just talked about, and going back to doing things that are goals that are aligned with my values. Sorry.
Wonderful. Very, very helpful. Another question is, what if it's not your mind that's telling you that you look disgusting or that you're not good enough, but society as a whole?
To me, so society can say it, right? So anybody, like even if it's not society, somebody can come up to you on the street and tell you you're disgusting. A stranger could do that. Now, when they do that, how much do you fuse with it? How much do you then connect with it? And I'm going to ask you, when they tell you that and you hear it, do you, again, align with it? And if you are aligning with it, is it leading you to a life of meaning and value? Because anybody can tell us anything. And this becomes a little bit more of a boundary situation, which is like, I don't want to get into true and false, but anybody can say anything at any time that they want. Right? Society can say anything, movies can say anything, people can say anything. People can be really hurtful intentionally to us, or attempt to be hurtful intentionally to us. And it's going to be whether or not we give that a ton of energy and we fight with it. So if a stranger comes on the street, or society produces a show that says, like, hey, if you're not looking this way, you're disgusting and a failure. And I decide to hang on to that and go, oh my gosh, I am disgusting and I am a failure. And I wrap myself around that. Am I going to be able to be in the moment and live a life that's meaningful, fulfilling to me? Or am I going to start trying to engage in behaviors to stop that thought, stop that feeling, when at any time anybody could tell us that even if we did all the work in the world, right? Even if 90% of us, even if 90% of society thought that we also were accepted and were, looked appropriately and had the appropriate job and were successful, still 10% could tell you that you're failed and you suck. How much are you going to align with this external voice? Because I've worked with people that can hear that and go, yeah, that's not my value. Like I don't compare myself to what society in general is saying. I don't compare to what my family is saying. I compare to my values. Am I living within my values? And I know it sounds glib. I don't mean to be glib. But it comes down to how much do you hold on to whatever those external messages are? And then how much are you fighting with those external messages in order to get rid of them? And if you've been able to do that, society says you're disgusting, and you've been able to go, oh, that's a really awful thought. And I fought with it and I used some control behaviors and I don't have that thought anymore. Great. But my guess is that society's told us that we've engaged in a ton of behaviors to feel worthwhile. We haven't been able to, and we continue to engage in these control behaviors as opposed to going, you know what, society might be saying that. My mind might be convincing me that society believes that about me. And I'm still going to find out what's meaningful and fulfilling to me, and those are the actions that I'm going to take.
Excellent. Another practitioner has a question.
Sure.
How do you address clients who struggle to connect or identify their values or are resistant to looking into what they value?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those people that struggle, I usually just work with what we talked about, which is have the behaviors worked and reviewing what it's cost them. And usually if we can start going to a place of, wow, like I've constantly done this and it has not worked. Like I've constantly used laxatives and diuretics and steroids or whatever, and I still do not feel worthy enough, worthwhile enough, any of those things. And once they start to have some of their own internal expression of, yeah, this isn't working, then it becomes a place to introduce value. Some people won't want to experience those right away. And I didn't include it on here, but Act Made Simple, if you go there, they have a website, Dr. Harris does, that has just basically 60, I think it's 60 values, and it kind of defines some of them, but there are way more than 60 values. So I've worked with athletes, and athletes might say things like, well, I value being a baseball player. Well, it's not a value because it's not a way of behaving or acting. What I would ask there is, okay, so what kind of baseball player do you want to be? Well, I want to be a skillful one, or okay, well, great. So being skillful is a value, because you can be skillful whether you're a baseball player or a therapist or a janitor or whatever. Do you value being skillful? Is it a global quality? So I kind of start working with clients that way too, to start figuring out what these global qualities are. When we ask about relationships, if our clients define relationships as being important, what kind of friend do you want to be? What kind of significant other do you want to be? What kind of family member do you want to be? What kind of behaviors do you want to engage in? And then they might say, I want to be honest. Okay, well, honesty is a behavior that you can engage in right now. Honesty never ends, right? You can be honest until your last breath. We never check that off the list. And you can be honest across a whole span of different areas in your life. So if people are resistant to values in the beginning, I usually just stick with understanding and identifying the thoughts, the control behaviors that we've engaged in, and what it's cost us. And then I kind of gently start to move into values and define values versus goals and start asking questions like that. You might even be able to ask questions like this. Okay, let's say that we can wave a magic wand and take away all of the energy, the spiritual, emotional, and physical energy that you've used around your eating disorder or substance abuse or whatever it might be. And we gave that back to you. What kind of person would you be? Can I also ask that? Okay, let's say that you got to your goal weight. So once you get to your goal weight, how would you act then? What kind of person would you be? If we had a camera on you and it was a television show and we were watching you, how would you act? They might say, oh, well, I'd be a little bit more confident. I would walk more upright. I would be more social with people. Okay, so can we practice engaging in some of those things now? I hope that answers your question. I can't see you, so.
That was excellent. I know we're at 5 o'clock. Can I just give you one more question, and then the rest
Yeah,
I will email to you, Lee, from the individuals to respond to directly. This was another really interesting question from a practitioner, and it is, it's kind of a comment asking for your feedback. I would think eating disorder clients have blurred lines between experiential avoidance and valued living. True?
Absolutely, absolutely. And remember, values, and like I try to define values as they're the ways that we want to act, what we want to stand for, and how we want to engage in the world, how we want to behave. Where I see our clients start to get confused in eating disorders is they jumble up goals versus values, which goals are things you can obtain or not obtain, right? Values are ways that we want to act, and they're global across the lifespan, and they're desired by us. So absolutely they are, and this is where we as practitioners start checking in with them. When you go to the, like, I'm going to use the gym, and I know I feel like I've beaten that analogy over the head now a few times. But when you go into the gym, what is the motivation to go to the gym? Talk to me about that. Well, my motivation in the gym is like, I feel like I've been really lazy and kind of disgusting, and my mind's telling me this. Okay, so right now there's like a red flag for me going, okay, and again, I don't want to be this like authoritarian, like we have to examine every single thought that everybody has, but with our eating disorder clients, that can, in the gym, can be a really dangerous thing. So right there, when they tell me those things, it's like, okay, I'm not going there because I desire to go there. I'm going there because I'm feeling or thinking this way about myself, and going to this place will get rid of that thought or feeling for me or minimize it. And it's helping clients to start to recognize what is the driving force behind the behaviors they're engaging in. And some of them, as the last question described, might not even know what their values are. I would suggest that a vast majority of us don't know what our values are because we haven't done a lot of values work. We haven't really thought of that. A lot of us confuse goals with values. But absolutely, our clients might say things like, well, I value being skinny. I value having a six-pack. Well, that's not a value. That's not a behavior of the way that you want to engage in the world. That is a goal. You either will have the six-pack or you won't. You either will be skinny or you won't. What I'm going to ask is, okay, so say you're skinny, what is it now? How would you interact with the world? How would you behave? What would be important to you? What would you do? What would you stand for? And then when you work back that way a little bit, people start to see a little bit that what they're engaging in is not necessarily valued living, it's more avoidance behaviors. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, this is what we have to start to tease out. And we can only tease it out by being able to define what values are, and define what goals are, and define what our minds tell us, and define like the behaviors that we use to try to get rid of or control or manipulate thoughts.
Excellent. What a great presentation. And there's a bunch more questions. I will email these to you, Lee, so that you can respond.
Sure. Thank you.
And I encourage everyone, if you will, please, to email just to me, Jacqueline at Eating Disorder Hope, or on our contact page, feedback for Lee on his webinar so that I can share that with him, because I think this was one of the best we've had. And he's just such an encouraging, insightful guy. I really appreciated your time today, Lee.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to listen to me. And if you send me questions, I'll try my best to get back to all of them. But thank you so much. I really enjoy doing this.
And thank you to Aloria Health for sponsoring this event. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.